Good morning, everyone. We're just going to wait a minute for some folks to join us, and then we'll get started.
Good morning, Lisa.
Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hello, Paul. You too.
Good afternoon. Almost.
Oh, yeah. I'm in the mountain time zone right now, so it's still
Yeah,
morning
yeah.
here.
I'm in Atlanta and we're in regular time. So Lisa, it feels like the mountains. It's 36 degrees.
I think it's warmer than that here.
I know.
It was 28 this morning here.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, we're supposed to get snow tonight into tomorrow, I think, but good morning again, everyone. We're going to wait just one more minute till it is officially high noon in East Coast time, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure that more people will join us as we go. Okay, Mitch, according to my computer, it is 12 o'clock. Do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Sure. Hi, friends. Good to see all you guys on Zoom. So this is one of our newest traditions, the town halls, and I'm really happy that these have taken off. Couple of things. I just have a couple messages, and then I'm going to shift it to Josie. Somebody else on mute. Okay, hold on. So then I'm going to turn it back to Josie, and then Josie will lead on to Pilar. So a couple things to just give you an update on, and Pilar will have more. So for those of you guys who participated in the annual meeting, whether it was live or virtually, it was awesome. We had great sessions. We all appreciated the effort of the staff in putting that meeting on. From all indications, it was a huge success. So thank you to everybody who participated and who was part of that. The upcoming meeting in March is our next biggest one, the mid-year. That's always huge with tax reform and the craziness in DC going on, with legislation. It should make for some great sessions. That is March 19th to the 23rd. I'm not sure when the materials will go out, but I'm thinking it's going to be soon, and maybe Pilar can touch on that. So mark your calendars for that. That's what I'm getting at. Also, the schedule for the spring is going to be full from a TEI standpoint. There's a couple big things: tax technology seminar in San Francisco, Fed Level 1, an international course, and you may even see some other virtual conferences coming up. And Pilar will also talk about some of the on-demand learning that will become available. We've had some internal questions, many of you guys from all the different chapters, about rebates, and we still are waiting for some of the chapters to provide information on the rebates. If you haven't done that yet, please send Pilar and myself an email. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you're a chapter president, ping me after or ping Pilar, and maybe the email got lost. We've had about almost half the chapters kind of chime in one way or another. There's no pressure as to going one way or the other on what we're asking. Obviously, it would help in certain ways, but if you can respond back, that is appreciated. So we have a true count of everybody. For those who have asked for the rebates, they will be mailed out shortly after we got your response. So Debbie is gonna work on that. Other than that, I think from my standpoint, everything is working great. We're doing lots of work behind the scenes on many issues. There's going to be hoping to have certain of our liaison meetings in the winter months go as planned as we did in the past. I'd like to see them in person. It's a little bit beyond our, us to plan for that, but those are also in the works. So other than that, I'm gonna just toss it over to Josie. I can't see Josie. Hopefully she's on. But
You
Josie,
can see me now. Are
hey,
you
Josie,
able to see? Hi.
still look the same. Yay. So I'll pass it over to Josie, and then we'll keep moving on this.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Mitch. And hello, everyone. I'm Josie Scalia, and I'm the International Treasurer this year for TEI. So happy to be with you guys today. So today's event, we had started this last year, Kathy Stevens and I, and was basically the spirit of this was to make the connections between the chapters, because we know that's at the heart core of TEI, and with the Institute with Washington, to make sure the links. And we thought, what better way than to do this through Town Hall. So last year we had done, I think our first one, we had sort of a tour of the officers. Everybody kind of explained a little bit about their roles, what they were doing. Then we had, we featured the committees, the different heads of each committee, and they kind of explained a little bit about what they've been working on, which I think was really, really terrific, informative. And after that, we had another one where we featured the staff of TEI. And today's event is going to be really about this new world we're living in. And so the virtual one that we lived in last year, and now this sort of hybrid that we're living in this year. And going to go through and feature with some different people with some success stories, and they can go through and also the TEI team. So with that, I'll hand it over to Pilar.
Okay, thanks. Hello, everybody. It's great to see you, and I'm glad you could join today. I'll be brief. I'm so excited to have everyone together to really, I think, share what chapters are doing in this space. We had a great hybrid event with our annual conference, but just to be clear, our platform it's expensive, and so what we're looking to do is to come up with alternatives that are things that the chapters can also roll out for all of their meetings as people are trying to decide whether they're comfortable meeting in person or whether they prefer to stay virtually. And so we've seen a lot of different models over the last few months of what people have done, and this is a chance to share what went well, what worked, and also to give you guys a chance to ask questions regarding that. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Just briefly, our staff is here to help you. You guys all probably know Terry and Lynn and Lisa, who've been working with you on chapter Zoom meetings and so forth over the past 2 years. We also have a new staff member, Lauren Anderson, who joined us a few months ago. Lauren is our new online education manager, and she's here to help the chapters as well. So we're really trying to build the resources here to be able to support you with this. Before we jump in, I just also want to note a couple of new things that we have going on in case they're of interest to you or your chapter members. We talked about them in the newsletter, but we do have a new pass-throughs and partnerships group. And there is a link if you want to sign up for that. If you do a lot of work in that area, please be sure to check that out. We'd like to have discussions like these that kind of span the TEI membership. We've also launched a CTO discussion group. We're going to be sending out the email for that. If you're not part of our CTO community on TEI
Oh, I
Connect,
thought I
you
responded.
can always join for that. And we're going to have a discussion regarding tax reform and comments on the upcoming legislation. And that'll be probably on the 20th or 21st of December. So those are some new things that we're trying to do to bring cross sections of the membership together for these types of discussions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. As everyone else has said, thank you so much for taking time out to join us. We are going to take a little tour around a couple of our chapters this morning to talk about their hybrid experiences. Given that it is the end of Q4 for many corporations and also coming up on the end of the year, a couple of folks who were supposed to join us haven't been able to, but luckily I was part of their planning process, so I'll be able to fill in some gaps. And then we're going to provide some information on resource recommendations and that sort of thing. So we're going to start first with Juan Carlos Rubio from the EMEA chapter. The EMEA chapter recently hosted a very successful hybrid meeting using their sponsors platform. So Juan Carlos, if you could just take a few minutes and tell us how you went about putting your meeting together and what worked well with it, that would be great.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Lisa, and hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here and with all of you guys sharing our experiences in Madrid conference, and we tend to think that hybrid is kind of an easy way to go because you give everyone the option to attend the way they want, but it's actually more challenging from an organizational standpoint because you have all the challenges that you have when you have in-person or normal conferences, whatever that means in these days, and then you have also the technology challenges which you have to deal with for online attendance. So the experience we had, I think, was great overall as a learning experience. If I start from the beginning, initially we had a discussion on whether we were going to charge for the event or not, because this was the first event after COVID. It was basically an event that should have taken place in 2020. And finally took place a year after. So we decided not to charge anything, but on the condition that the registrants were members of TEI. So we did that, you know, as a kind of way to get people together again, at the same time as an inducement for having more members. And I have to say, we managed, so we were successful in getting a substantial number of new members or people who hadn't renewed their membership and did so because of the event. Then the downside of making a free of charge webinar or congress was really that there were many registrants, and we were around 100 finally. But then between the in-persons and the hybrids, we were between 60 and 70. Speaking with our folks in Taxon, they were saying this is like the standard rate when they make a free of charge event. So overall, I think it was good as well. Then to quickly tell you about the experience. So what was challenging was to manage the in-person attendance because Garrigues from the Taxon Networks gave us a limit of 20 participants, 20 in-person participants. So there were people who were already in Madrid, there were all other people traveling, so that was something we had to manage. There was also a dinner, and some people were not present at the conference, but were going to go to the dinner, so we had to manage that part as well. And then on the technology part, or on the online side, what I thought was a challenge was the fact that we were using Garrigues or Taxon Partner technology, and basically they were super helpful, but some of the things that were obvious to them were not as obvious for us, and there was, you know, we had to go through these extensive communication exercise with not so much time because the conference was almost here. Then they had to send, which was already planned, but they send the invites themselves. So this part I thought was a bit complicated, and I was wondering whether, you know, at the end of the day, it would have been better to use our own technology, our own platform. So it was helpful in a way because they were doing all the technology work themselves, but at the same time, it was challenging because we were not so close to the organization of that from a technology standpoint. So this is really what I can say. I think it was a great experience. People were really happy. For the ones who could attend in person, they were really happy to do so. We got very positive feedback, many postings and repostings on LinkedIn, and very insightful discussions with a lot of things going on in the OECD, European Union world. As you all know, there were a lot of food for discussions and thoughts. So yeah, that's what I can say. Laurie is also in the call, I think. So Laurie, in case you want to add something, she's our chapter president.
Well, there isn't a lot to add, except that, yeah, you made really a lot of effort to make it a success, because all the challenges you had, I didn't feel them, but I noticed what you were running around and trying to make it happen. So of course it doesn't go by itself, and I think it's the challenge here is that you cannot just add it on. So it's not you have your meeting that you organize in person, it's one, and you add to that a virtual meter, so 1 + 1 = 2. The complexity that it brings is that it becomes 3 from an effort perspective, because you have to make sure that when you have breakouts, for example, what we had to do with the direct and the indirect tax committees, so that also the ones that are joining virtually, that you make it work also whilst the time you're moving from a meeting room at Garrigues to another one. So in practice, it's more effort than if you would do separately. This said, the comments were really great. So I think we should do it again, because yeah, from what we notice here in Europe, we're now in the 4th wave of COVID. We're not in a situation to say that we are sure that we could even afford to do a meeting that is only in person, though you feel that that is the need of the members. That's how the comments that I received. So people that attended said that it was really a good meeting. The ones that were able to join us were super enthusiastic, whereas the people that were joining us virtually were super enthusiastic that we made all that effort, but said that they missed the connection part. So that's what I can add to that, and a big thank you to Juan Carlos.
Hey, Laurie and Juan Carlos, did you get 2 things? One, did you get more people that attended because of the virtual setup than you have had at other meetings? Because for instance, when we did the regional meeting and it was virtual, we got like 5 times as many people. I mean, literally we could draw 100 people. We had 500 people on the calls for the regional meeting. And then the other thing you mentioned, Juan, is the advertising and the, you know, I'm new, some of you might know, to LinkedIn, and I'm trying to get the word out on TEI items and post different things. I'm going to try to post the magazine. So any of you guys that are not on there, and just look me up, and I don't know if it's called friend or whatever, come send me send me a request, and I want to put you in there because I'm trying to get as many CTOs as I can so that we spread the word of TEI out there. But I thank you guys for your efforts in doing that. So I was just curious if you had more people.
Yeah, actually, it's a very good point. That's a discussion we had ourselves, because the question was, and that goes back to the point I was making on getting a number of registrants, but then a certain percentage of attendance, right? So I was thinking at some point, maybe if you make it online, you would have had more registrants. But at the end of the day, it's just because people are clicking on it, and you have to connect that to the fact that this conference was free of charge as well.
That's what it is, yeah. Because I think if you make it payable and you then, I think we would have more people registering now if it would be payable compared to what we had before. I think it would be like that. But then we would have to properly manage it on LinkedIn and things like that. What also is a learning curve we are going through, at least some of us are going through it. And I speak for myself when I say I'm going through that learning curve on how to utilize it.
Yeah, no, and it was definitely a great learning experience. I think for us, at least the way we approached it, we had been so much time without getting together, that for us it was an opportunity, and we presented it in that way to get the community together, say, hey guys, we're here, let's get together and discuss again. So it was a kind of a marketing event in that way as well. And maybe the benefits, except for the ones I was mentioning on the memberships, we won't see them immediately, but I think it's good, you know, and I sent so many reminders. I thought for some people my emails would go to spam now, but yeah, that was really a point as well of this conference, to make it a,
you
to give
said
this marketing.
that it was, you also said, Juan Carlos, that it was clear that every time you had a reminder that you could see immediate response. So it's a different world than before, where people would just put in their agenda, okay, the next meeting will be in March, for example, and make already a note in their calendar. It's world is evolving. You see that there is more these social media out there, and that people also wait longer sometimes, but then when you remind them, they finally hit the button and register. What it will now be for the next one, where we will make it payable again, because now we've increased the number of members again. So I'm hoping that we can land at the same number of people, but the people that then pay their for attending the conference.
Yeah.
I wanted to just share a few things. We did do a survey after our annual conference, which was hybrid, and we asked how people would like to attend annual and mid-year in the future. And about 52% said they want it in person, and the remainder said a combination of either fully virtual or hybrid, which would be, I think, in our case, our platform allowed people to come to a session in person or take a session from their room. So I thought that was interesting. I think, you know, having these virtual options for people is important as we proceed. I will say that one of the things that is a challenge is, in a fully in-person meeting, you have fantastic networking, and I think you can easily get to a place where you can have networking or the ability to comment and collaborate if everyone is fully virtual. In a hybrid setting, it's very difficult because to create an experience where the in-person group is and then the people who are participating virtually have the ability to comment, and collectively it's a challenge in terms of being able to see everyone, being able to hear everyone, and so forth. And so that's, I think, you know, one of the things to think about as you're planning for hybrid events. You know, it may be that you have a breakout that is for virtual only, so everyone kind of is equivalent, has the ability to comment and chat, or figure out how you're going to make sure that those participating virtually have access to hear and see what they need to when you have more of an interactive session. So.
And additionally, to follow up on what Lori said about people registering later, that is absolutely a trend that we have seen at the Institute level. Our members have always been kind of late registrants, you know, usually in the 4 to 6 week out window from an event. Obviously, the Institute level events are a little different from chapters because there's travel involved, there's hotel rooms involved and things like that. But even with some of our hybrid events, we've seen that window getting shorter and shorter. We probably had 10 or 15 people register for the in-person portion of the annual conference in the 10 days prior to the conference. Some of that obviously is related to the public health situation and people kind of waiting till the last minute to make a decision to travel. But even prior to COVID, we had seen that registration window getting closer and closer to actual events. So that's definitely something for folks to keep in mind, both for in-person event and for hybrid/virtual events. And to Juan Carlos's point about 100 registrants and only about 70 participants, that is in fact also a pretty standard ratio for free events. If you get 70% attendance, you're actually doing really well. You very, very rarely get 100%. I mean, even for this event today, we didn't get to 100% of registrants participating. With virtual, it's easy for somebody to get pulled out of their training session to go to a meeting. If they weren't planning to be out of the office, somebody walks in, they get distracted, those types of things. So it's definitely not uncommon in any way for that to be the case. With paid events, there is a little bit higher pickup rate, but it has to be a meaningful dollar amount to some extent. Like a $20 investment, someone is more likely to skip than if they paid $100 for it, for instance. So as we're all learning into these different approaches to education and pricing, it's going to take a little bit of experimentation, I think. And one thing I did forget to say earlier, certainly if you have questions about what the chapters have done, please feel free to use the raise your hand function to ask questions of other chapter leaders directly, or feel free to put your question in the chat. So next we're going to turn to the Florida chapter. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
No, I just wanted to mention just one thing because I'm not sure where in this still we would discuss this, and we've done this before. If you're planning a live event like the Atlanta chapter is doing next week, make sure you talk to Patrick about clauses if some public health issue comes up, or some different ordinances or whatever it's called in different places. Very important to have some language in your contract when you're talking to establishments, hotels, restaurants. So that's very important.
Yep. Juan Carlos, you raised your hand. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, very quick question. For the conference that you did recently and talking about these people taking a decision at the last time, do you also allow people to cancel the registration with short notice? How does that work?
We did for the annual conference. Again, given the public health situation and our desire to be as flexible with members and as understanding of people's concerns with travel as well as company policies, we took a really, really flexible approach. So basically you could change from in-person to hybrid, or in-person to virtual, or virtual to in-person with no penalty. If you were going from in-person to virtual, we would refund you the difference. If you were going from virtual to in-person, we would just invoice you the difference. We pretty much did away with cancellation fees, except for people who canceled after the Thursday before the conference started on Sunday. And that's just because we actually at that point have costs involved in terms of food and beverage and things that we've made commitments to, although we lowered the cancellation fee from $200, I think, to $50. So it was still a very modest cancellation fee. And so we really did take as flexible an approach as we could, just to make sure that everybody could be at a place where they were comfortable. Again, pre-COVID, our approach would have probably been a little bit different, but given where things are and the ever-changing nature of the public health situation, I think it's really important for everybody to focus on flexibility and not only adhering to your local guidance in terms of masks and vaccine requirements and group sizes and all that sort of thing, but also making sure that you're giving chapter members as much flexibility as you can to find the environment that they're most comfortable in. And we've seen that a lot in the different hybrid events, and it's been very successful because people who have at the last minute, oh, my kid got sick and so I don't want to risk it, and we were waiting for the test results, that sort of thing. Other questions for Amia before we move on to Florida? Okay, so unfortunately, I don't see him here. Andy Meyer from the Florida chapter was hoping to be with us today, but he had a doctor's appointment. Mitch, I know that you and Brad both also participated in the Florida chapter's event, so you are welcome to jump in at any point. So they took a simple hybrid approach. They used Zoom as their platform. Their event was hosted at in the meeting space at a Topgolf, which I guess is one of these outdoor driving ranges where, you know, it's multiple layers, and they do have meeting and conference space. They were very fortunate that they had a sponsor for that event that covered the costs of the Topgolf. The event started at lunchtime with a lunchtime speaker. And what we did for their event, again, using the Zoom platform, they set up a camera, they purchased a microphone, and we'll talk a little bit later. Lynn Spence from the TEI team is going to talk to us a little bit about the types of specifications you might want to consider for different video cameras for events. So they set up a static camera. Basically, it just sat in one place. They purchased a Yeti brand microphone. Several of us on the TEI team use Yeti microphones in various aspects. It's a really very economical microphone, costs less than $100, has great range. And so they were able to still have their speakers up in front of the group, moving back and forth. You know, those particular group of speakers were walker and talkers. So they were able to be at the front of the room. You could still see them very clearly. I participated in the event virtually, so I had the full virtual experience, was able to see the speakers, was able to hear the speakers. We ran the slide deck for remote attendees, virtual attendees, in-person attendees had the slides up on the TV screen. What was really handy was that I could see the TV screen in the camera, so I was able to advance the slides for the virtual attendees so that we stayed in sync. There are ways to do it so that everybody's just essentially looking at the same slide deck and you don't have that little half-second delay. But they had, I think, 30 people in person, and about 70 people that participated virtually in their event. So it was a 4-hour educational event. And then they had a social event afterwards, which obviously the virtual attendees were not able to participate in, but for the full education experience, the virtual attendees were able to participate. They were able to ask questions using the Q&A function in Zoom. Andy, the chapter president for the Florida chapter, had a computer open at his seat in the room and was able to monitor that and ask questions directly of the speakers. We had a little audio problem with in-person audience questions, just that they couldn't be heard by the virtual attendees. We asked the speakers to repeat the questions before they answered it. That was able to kind of overcome and accommodate that particular issue. And so, again, a very successful approach. They were able to have all their speakers on camera. All their speakers were there in person, which was very convenient for them as well. So we were able to broadcast that. You could see them. You could have that experience of being there in person without actually being there. And the Florida chapter also, I believe, did not charge for the event because it was fully sponsored. And we were using essentially free technology, right? Many of the chapters now have taken advantage of TEI Zoom license. If you haven't and need a platform to use for either remote or hybrid events, definitely let us know. We can provide your chapter with a TEI license that you can use for webinars and meetings that make it really easy. It's a no-cost solution. It's not obviously as robust as the platform that TEI used for the annual conference, but there's $120,000 price difference from one platform to the other. So obviously one is a feasible solution for our chapters, one maybe not so much. So that was the Florida chapter's experience. Mitch and Brad, I don't know if you have anything, you were both there in person. So I don't know if you have comments about whether or not the camera and the microphone were invasive for the in-person attendees, or if there was any inconvenience for the in-person attendees to accommodate the hybrid attendees?
So I think that I don't know, Brad, I don't think Brad ended up going to the conference at the last minute, but I thought the experience was great. The way it was handled was great. We were not squished on each other, which was another thing. You know how you kind of put people in a room, and we were very well spaced out. I think at a round table there were 3 people at a round table. They did have nice accommodations there. You always have to consider that now. There was some people I think wore masks, mostly not in Florida. From a technology standpoint, I have to laugh because I'm the least technical person, as most of you guys know, but Andy had the little camera on top of a cup, I think. I think we can do a little better job of investing in tripods or something to put a little camera on and figure that out. It was a little weird from the standpoint of, yeah, you had people that were like walking on that side of the room, and we kept saying, move back into the camera range. So somehow, unless you move the camera each time, right, and invest in a fancy camera like we have for our board meeting that kind of focuses on the sound, you have to kind of keep them all within, maybe putting tape barriers of, hey, this is where you can go, this is when you're off camera, this is when you're on. And like you said, Lisa, the biggest part, the problem was with questions coming in or questions going out. Really need to really emphasize with the speakers to repeat those questions. If not, you're only hearing part of it. But everybody was happy to be there. The sponsors, which were DHG and Alston and Bird, were just giddy about the attendance. They appreciate everybody. And we had a similar thing like Juan Carlos was talking about. More people, I'd say maybe 10 more people. And it might have been because of work. And the Florida chapter is very unique also. Florida chapter is very large. I mean, they're spread out through the whole state. So it's hard to get people. We had probably 10 more people show up to the social that started after the 4 hours. So that was good, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I appreciated being there. Brad, I don't think Brad was there, but Brad, do you have any more comments?
You're right, Mitch. I was not there because I had a work meeting. So,
Well, that got in the way. I see.
yeah,
Okay.
I had to attend virtually like Lisa did, and I thought it was really good. Other than the things that have already been brought up about questions.
And we could have used you on the golf team for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. And it was great to see our colleagues in person. There were people there that had not been to any TEI meetings in over 2 years now. And that was a big thing, to reconnect with people, even in the golf part of it at the end. We really were pretty much spaced out. The accommodations had, definitely cleaners everywhere. And, you would use a golf club and there was sanitizers. So we're good. I like Dave's.
Well, thank you, Mitch and Brad both. Brad, I thought you had attended virtually. I remembered seeing you in the virtual platform. Mitch, please check the chat because Dave Stevens is snarking on you just a little bit in the chat. So I'll leave it to you to respond to him directly. So the other chapter hybrid event that I participated in, and certainly once we're done with the ones that I've been involved in, if there are other chapters who have done hybrid events, we would love to hear from your experiences as well, was the Iowa chapter. Amy Rooney, who is the chapter president of the Iowa chapter, got called into a work meeting, and their first vice president, who was also involved in the planning, his company acquired 2 other companies on November 30th. So he seemed to think that that whole work thing was more important than joining us for this conversation as well. So they took a slightly different approach. They decided not to have video for their in-person speakers and just to broadcast audio and slides. They did at the last minute have one speaker who ended up participating virtually. The speaker had a family emergency and couldn't travel. But again, being set up for a hybrid event, gave them the flexibility to still have that speaker participate virtually. So that created a little bit of an odd situation because we ended up having one speaker on camera and two speakers only hearing their voice, never getting to see their face. So I think the chapter has decided that if they are in that situation again, if they decide to move forward with another hybrid event, that they would probably look to include video of the speakers. And you do kind of miss out on a certain piece when it's just the audio. So much of communication these days is visual as well. And so I think that they decided that missing that piece was a disservice to the virtual attendees. They were able to run the slides through the Zoom, broadcast that into the hotel room where the speakers were. So everybody was essentially seeing the same slide deck at the same time. The speakers had a computer at the table that they were using to advance their slides. So because they didn't do video, they didn't have the camera piece of things to worry about. Although again, and Pilar, thank you to responding to Teresa, we'll get into some details about cameras. A chapter should be able to put on a hybrid event for an investment much under $500 and really as little as about $250, depending on what your priorities are for your camera. Lynn, again, is going to cover some of those details. The nice thing is, too, is that all of these are one-time investments and the chapter can continue to use them pretty much in perpetuity. I mean, I'm sure the Florida chapter will continue to use their microphone. You know, the same thing, the camera that the Florida chapter used happened to be Andy's personal camera, which is why there was a cup. You can get, and my dad happens to have one sitting on his desk, little tripods that you can put your cameras on for virtual events when you are using cameras. So for the Iowa chapter, they're again using their Zoom account. I was able to participate from home to provide support. We got together about 30 minutes before the event started just to check out all of the technology, make sure that we could hear the speakers, that the slides were showing to both sides properly. And I forgot to mention that for the Florida chapter, we did the same thing. We got together about a half hour before the event started to just kind of do a quality check on all of the technology. And then ran through the program pretty similarly. We had the same struggle with questions from the audience, the virtual attendees not being able to hear them as well. They're, again, either having the speakers repeat them. There are opportunities to add additional speakers from a chapter perspective, additional microphones. I don't think it's necessarily worth the investment from a chapter perspective, especially for just a couple hour or a half day program. If you're talking about a multi-day, you know, a tax school or a regional conference, we might make some different recommendations for those. But as long as you remind your speakers to please repeat the questions before they answer them, it makes it perfectly, you know, the virtual attendees can definitely hear what's going on. And then they also had someone with a computer in the room that could ask questions of the speakers that came in from the virtual audience. And Rich, I see that you turned your camera on and raised your hand. I know that you were at the in-person presentation for that at the hotel. So if there's things that you want to add about that representing your chapter, that would be great.
Absolutely. First of all, my participation was in person, but my participation otherwise was just to put our chapter president in touch with Lisa because I knew Lisa would take good care of us, and she did that and above and beyond, as always. So from that standpoint, we were very appreciative of her engagement with us, and we felt that it was very successful under the circumstances. We've since invested in or at least approved investing in a camera, so we'll be able to allow everybody to see in the future. But very much appreciate Lisa and company helping us to put it off. And I think our speakers were pleased with it. We were able to see them when we were live in the room, the ones that were the virtual speaker as well as the two live speakers, and think that we were hesitant to go too far on the expectation that maybe someday we'll get more to fully live, but realizing that we'll probably have the opportunity for some people to attend virtually on an ongoing basis, and the increased number that participated in a regular meeting. We typically would have somewhere in the 45 to 50 range people attend, but I think we are pushing 60 with the combination of in-person and live. We had probably 20 people live in the room, which we were a little disappointed and hopeful for more in the future, but all in all, a great success. So thank you very much, Lisa. We appreciate all the support that we got from you and the team.
Well, it was certainly my pleasure. Go ahead, Pilar.
Quick question for you, and this is, I think, with respect to all the meetings. Were the speakers mic'd? Did they have a microphone, like a lavalier mic, or were they just using the microphone that was placed in the room? I think for EMEA, all the speakers were mic'd, but for Florida and Iowa, was that individual or not?
The speakers were not mic'd. One of the nice things about the Yeti microphone is that it has a pretty broad range, and you can also set it to pick up audio directionally. So for Florida, we had it set only to pick up the audio from the front side of the microphone and not the back side. So we didn't really have problems with background noise. During the presentation, most of the people got up and got lunch. We didn't have problems with plates clattering and silverware and things like that for the remote attendees because the microphone was focused right up front. And it was probably, and Mitch, you were there in person, maybe 10 or 15 feet from, maybe 10 feet from the speakers. So because that microphone has such a great range, it's able to accommodate that without the speakers being mic'd. If you're meeting in a conference space, a hotel or something like that, that has built-in audio, you do have the ability to lavalier, Madonna mic, whatever you want to call it, your speakers, and have that audio fed into the Zoom. It does require a little bit of extra either Bluetooth connection or wiring connections to the laptop that's broadcasting, but it's absolutely viable, especially if you have, again, the people who like to walk and talk as opposed to just a panel sitting at a table. Christy, I see your hand up, but really quickly in the chat, Michelle had asked if the in-person attendees were able to see the video of the offsite speaker, and the answer to that is yes. He was, because they were showing the slides through Zoom, the offsite speaker was also visible there on the Zoom broadcast to the on-site attendees. So that worked out well, because that way at least the on-site attendees were able to see everybody. It was the remote attendees who missed out a little bit on the video side from the two in-person speakers. So Christy, I see your hand up. What question do you have?
Did either the hotel or the golf place, I don't know if either of them had issues with you bringing your own equipment and kind of jury rigging a virtual conference using a microphone and a camera versus their services. And the reason I ask is we have a convention at the convention center, and I know that they will probably want us to use their services, which will cost an arm and a leg and make this not feasible. And so didn't know if, it'd be very easy to hide in the back with a, probably a microphone, maybe a camera, but didn't know if you guys had encountered that at either of the locations.
So,
Go ahead, Mitch.
I was gonna say, I don't know, I don't think Topgolf has that option, right? But from my regional experience, I've definitely had that experience, and we have, we are allowed to bring our equipment into the conference, but we're also responsible for any technical glitches that would occur. So we can set it up and we can use it. You have to just see what this is at the Westin. We can, but if anything goes wrong, there's nobody to talk to but yourself, basically. So we always opt to have them assist us, especially with the big speakers and the audio visual. We can't do that, but the little restaurants, we've been some restaurants have it, but usually they don't charge you for it. That was my experience.
Yeah, and it is very site specific, Christy. The hotel that the Iowa chapter used was very flexible. They were willing to work with us if we wanted to plug into their mixer to be able to use the audio feed from the in-room microphones. We opted not to do that just because we were a little short on time and a little short on resource planning. We were limited to the laptops and computers that Amy and Andy had, and we didn't want to get overly technical in the big scheme of things. So it definitely is very site specific in terms of that. Daniel, you had a question? You're muted.
Yeah, I was just going to add a comment. So we did a hybrid event, and so we've navigated this issue with the hotels. We were fortunate that they let us, bring our own cameras in. That was not a cheap option, so it wasn't so much a savings in terms of cost, but we were partnering with another organization, so we wanted to do that. In the past, when we've talked to them about this, we have gotten that same response, that they want you to use their equipment, which is pretty expensive. I think we got a little bit more flexibility this time around, just because we were their first. They'd done some renovations. We were their first conference coming back after renovations, and so I think we got a little bit more flexibility from the hotel than what we normally would get. But we've seen the same thing, and I think in the future, if we were to do it again, we might end up where they might push back on us and want to do that. So I think it does depend. If you're trying to do this through a hotel, you might have to sort of operate a little differently, and it might be more expensive than if you had company space. If a company was willing to give you space, you have some other way to get space, or Topgolf or whatever it is, that might give you other options. I think one of the challenges we have, and other places might have this challenges as well, is that a lot of companies are not fully open, and even for employees. So the prospect of getting company space to bring in people for a conference from lots of different companies is probably not a very easy option to arrange at companies here. So our option when we did this really was a hotel. Is what made the most sense. But it did end up, not just for that, not just for the audiovisual side, but for other reasons, ended up being a fairly expensive, but a good experiment overall. But it wasn't a cheap option to make that work for us.
Yeah, it should definitely be part of the conversation when you are location planning, to make sure that you understand what the financial risks are, and what capabilities they do have, what capabilities they'll let you bring in, and what the chapter's priorities are. So we're gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the other parts of the hybrid meeting other than just the actual implementation. I know that there were some questions in the chat about cameras specifically. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Lynn Spence. She is our IT operations manager, and has done quite a bit of research, first for the Institute itself, so that we needed a new camera for our board meetings. But she has kindly done some research as well for some suggestions for the chapters. So Lynn, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so to start with, for the board meeting, we were really looking for a camera that had a 360-degree view, which we picked up the Owl for. Very, very nice camera, great features, little pricey. So I think for what you guys are looking for a hybrid type event, you're going to want to go with something a little less expensive, something that you can easily plug into a laptop. But I'm not going to give you exact cameras because I haven't tested all of them. If I bought every one and tested them, then I could give you specifically, these are the best. But what I will give you is a list of the specifications to actually shop for when you are looking for a camera. So first, you're going to want to look for something with a wide angle. This is at least 100 to 120 degree angle. If you can find something larger than that, that's great. Next, you're going to want to look for something with a high resolution. A 1080p or higher is good. You can do a 720, which is considered HD, but full HD is 1080p. That's where you're going to get a good picture. They have up to 8K in cameras. And if you're familiar with televisions, it's the same thing. But just keep in mind that the higher the resolution, the more processing power is required from your computer and the more bandwidth you're going to need. So if you're working with a hotel or if you're working at an event space of any kind, you need to make sure that you have that dedicated bandwidth if you're going to go for the super high resolution cameras. So I will say at a minimum 1080p, you'll probably be great. And most good or most decent cameras on the market today are at least 1080p. You're going to want to go for something that is 30 frames per second. Your average television show camera is at least 30 frames per second. Anything less than that, you're going to get a choppy picture. They go for 60 to 90 frames per second. But again, the higher you go, the more processing power you need and the more bandwidth you need. So go for at least something that's 30 frames per second. A glass lens over a plastic lens is going to give you a clearer picture. You can use one with a built-in mic. I know like a lot of the Logitech has built-in microphones. Some of the other ones have built-in microphones. I would only get if and only if your camera is only going to be within a few feet of your speakers. Generally, if you're going to have multiple speakers, you're going to want to set your camera back a little further. So you won't want something with a microphone. But if you only have one or two speakers and you get a camera with a built-in microphone, that's fine. Just look for something that has dual mics. So instead of one directional, you have more of optional bi-directional microphones. So you're capturing all that sound. Best case scenario, you can find something with an HDMI cable that connects that's going to give you a better picture, but a USB works perfectly fine. So most of your laptop level cameras are going to have a USB connection. And last but not least, I will say, look for a tripod.
Exactly.
If the Florida chapter taught us anything, it could be a little tabletop one, it could be a stand one. But a tripod is going to be helpful. They're very inexpensive. So I will tell you that all of the specifications that I've just given you are for cameras that are $200 or less. If you look on Amazon this time of year, you can find them for less than $100. So it's not an overly taxing cost for any of the specifications of the camera that I suggested. So that's what I have. And if you're not going to get one with a built-in mic, which if you're going to have more than two speakers, I suggest you get a separate mic. Like Lisa said, the Yeti mics have done an amazing job. They did an excellent job at the Florida chapter. I did attend that one virtually, so I was able to hear everything speakers were saying perfectly.
Great, thank you, Lynn. And Mary had asked in the chat if we'll send the specs out in a memo to chapters, and the answer is absolutely yes. We're also recording this session, and the recording will be available to anyone who needs it. But we will definitely be sending out a list of the specs. We'll also include the name of the microphone that the Florida chapter used, that Terry and I both use in our both in our personal and work lives. So the next piece of the puzzle impacts more the in-person side as opposed to the virtual side of hybrid meetings, and that's the health screening requirements for COVID. Everybody should know that the Institute has some policies in place right now for in-person meetings. There is a waiver that needs to be signed in advance. There's also a health screening questionnaire that needs to be completed by attendees each day of an event, if you are having a multi-day event. We obviously had this challenge for the annual conference. Terry Dowdy, for those of you who don't know him, is our Director of IT and Web Services, was tasked with solving that problem for us. And in the process of solving that, came across some different apps that might be options for the chapter. So Terry, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. One of the challenges we faced for the annual conference was we wanted to have attendees agree to the health screen or go through the health screening each day. So it was a 4-day conference. And that was a little bit of an obstacle. Plus, we wanted them to answer a questionnaire instead of just uploading a vaccine card. When we were doing the research prior to the annual conference, we found a bunch of apps out there that were vaccine checkers, basically. And we talked to numerous associations that were just outsourcing it to a third party to take care of that screening process. But that wasn't going to work for us. And we didn't want to spend an arm and a leg, and we didn't want to have anything customized too much. We found a company called Healthy Screen. This was a side project they did for clients, and it is basically designed for people coming into a building, returning to work, their office. That's what it was designed for, and it has a questionnaire they can complete, and then when they finish, boom, they've got a thing that they can show. For those of you who were at the annual conference, share my screen now. That's what they would get, something like that. Okay. Now, if you're just doing a one-day thing, this would be fine. There are other ones out there now since our annual conference, and they are proliferating every day. I did a quick search this morning prior to this meeting just to see what was out there, and there are numerous apps out for screening just for employees coming back to work. And that's really all you need, because that's what you're asking, the same thing that people come back to work are for your conference or your event. And they are inexpensive. A couple of $100, maybe $400 for us for all 4 days for the Healthy Screen. It's bare bones, but really that's all you need. But your situation may be different. So you'll want to check and see if they're going to offer you what you want. If it's vaccine cards, if it's going to be boosters, if it's going to be just answering questions and getting a check mark saying, yes, you're great. That's up to you. Please, if you have questions, we are here for you. Cannot emphasize that too much. We are here for you. Okay, that's it.
Terry, there is a question in the chat.
I see.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
I see. Okay, from Christine saying, can the event organizer get a list of all who completed the questionnaire on the app? Can it be downloaded for records? Yes, you can. And you also would get notified if somebody didn't pass the screening. You wouldn't know why they didn't pass, but you would be told who they were, so you could confront them. That's what we had at the annual conference. But you can download reports. Yes.
Mitch, you were going to add something?
Oh, I was just going to say, just be careful of the local requirements too. Because like if you're in New York, you have to show vaccine card when you go into restaurants in theory. So a lot of places will have different rules. Some require you to wear your mask in there, but that's different than the health screening.
That's very true. And that was another thing that we had to take into account because we were in Florida.
Right.
And they had different rules.
Yeah. And just so you know, for what we did, we had everyone complete the screening before coming in. And then as people were coming into the space, we would verify that they had the check mark showing that they passed for the day. And then we handed out color-coded stickers. So since we had a multiple day event, there was a different color for each day. That way we could see just by looking at someone's badge whether they had completed the questionnaire and shown their approval to somebody. And that helped us to kind of keep track as people, given that we didn't have like one central entrance for people who are coming into the space. And that worked out really well in terms of maintaining it for everybody. We did also need to come up with a process for those who made a mistake in filling out the questionnaire to make sure that, you know, we asked them the questions and verified that they didn't have any concerns before joining the meeting. We did have a few of those each day that we just needed to have, you know, a process to handle. So.
I'd like to throw in something, if I could, please. Totally unrelated, but I just noticed that Dorothy Green from the Fort Worth chapter is on, and I keep forgetting to do this. Fort Worth chapter was the first chapter to use TEI's Zoom license and did it extraordinary. And they were the guinea pigs. They were the beta testing. That's where we developed a lot of our practices and policies for. So Dorothy, thank you very much for that.
Yes, and Iowa and Florida certainly filled the same role from a hybrid event role as well. So we have definitely been very fortunate to learn from our chapters as much as our chapters have learned from us. And it's really exciting. And I know for me and really for Terry and his team too, this is kind of the favorite part of our job, is getting to work with the chapters and support you and ensure your success. Because as most of you have heard me say before, if our chapters are successful, the Institute will be successful. And it is definitely a trickle up kind of solution. So the last piece of the puzzle is the CPE side of things. That applies both in person and virtual. I know that every chapter handles CPE tracking and CPE assigning differently. Some chapters hand out a blank certificate at the end of the day that people fill in on their own. Other chapters collect all the information, issue certificates later, and some jurisdictions, a sign-in sheet is really all you need to prove attendance for CPE purposes. So there's a lot of options out there. Most of them are fairly expensive and would be mostly cost prohibitive for the chapters. For instance, the solution we used at the annual conference, which was a new solution for us, for those of you who have been to Institute level events, you know, for years and years and years, you had to fill out those bright colored pieces of paper. We took those pieces of paper back. We manually entered all the information into a big spreadsheet and then generated certificates from there. It was a laborious and time-consuming process. It would often be a month or more before you would get your CPE certificate. And depending on your state's audit cycle, that can cause problems for some people. We were fortunate this year to be able to introduce some scanning technology for CPE purposes that allowed us to get CPE certificates to folks by the end of the day, each day. We used a product called Meeting in a Box from a company called Cvent. It's literally a big box that they ship to your event site. It includes a printer and some scanners and some tablets that you use for your check-in and registration. It prints the badge with a barcode on it, and then you just scan the barcode at the door. That's about a $5,000 solution. So again, for most chapters, not exactly in the feasible zone for cost management. However, one thing that the Oklahoma City chapter has been using very successfully, and Rini was hoping to be able to join us, but I don't see her here. Although Rini, if you are here hiding somewhere, please feel free to open your mic and jump in. They found a website that allows them to upload their CPE information, and the website generates the certificate and emails it out, which I know for most chapters is actually the most painful part of the CPE process, is just taking all that information once you have it, getting the certificates generated and mailing them out. So let me go ahead and share my screen if I can find it. Here we go. The website is, the URL is CPE.io. They work with several different organizations. You can get CPE here. There are programs that are available that you can take. All of them are in the public accounting space, or the certified public accountant space. But if you go under their about, one of their big services is the issuance of certificates. They do offer a free trial. Pricing is then based on the number of certificates you would generate over a period of time. But as long as you have the email address, the amount of credits that someone should receive, it will kind of go through everything for you. It has a lot of other features as well, but certainly from a certificate generation perspective, this product seems to be working really, really well for the Oklahoma City chapter, and is very reasonably priced. So that is definitely something that chapters can look into from the CPE side of things. If you are getting into a bigger event, for instance, Region 9, we know is planning a regional event. The Minnesota President's conference comes up every year, which I know they're hoping to do in person this year, definitely reach out to us. Lauren, who is on the call with us, is our new online education manager and can certainly help chapters identify different solutions for CPE tracking. We are still kind of in the learning stages ourselves for some less expensive solutions. But again, I think for the chapters, the certificate piece of it is a big one. And so I would definitely encourage everyone to check out cpe.io that the Oklahoma City chapter highly recommends to folks. So those are kind of all of the big pieces of a hybrid event we've covered. Again, we'll put together some information and email it out to everyone in regards to camera specifications. We'll include the link to the CPE certificate program, some information about the different microphones. And again, if you are in need of a Zoom account and haven't yet taken advantage of one from the Institute, we are more than happy to provide that for you. And again, if you take nothing else from this whole conversation, please be sure to reach out to Terry or I. We are always happy to help and get you pointed in the right direction when it comes to technology solutions for your chapter. That being said, I know, Josie, you and Pilar had some other topics, I think, about remote work that you wanted to try and get into the conversation as well. So if there are not other questions about the hybrid events, I will turn it over to you guys to discuss the hybrid workspace.
Yeah, if we could real quickly before we get to that, I also wanted to address what we're working on for NASBA CPE for the internet-based live certification. As many of you may know, we've had a pilot program going on for the last year. In order to offer CPE for an online event, you do need to get special certification from NASBA for that. The Institute got that, I guess, in time for the annual conference in 2020. And we've been working with a number of chapters and regions to come up with a program so that we can offer our certification to support chapters that are putting on online events. In order to do that, we need to kind of collect all the information that we would need should NASBA come to us and ask, what we're doing, and to show that we're supervising and making sure that everything's being handled properly. We've had a chance to test it out, see what's working, and we expect to be able to offer that to all chapters in 2022. So that will hopefully be coming to you soon. We're trying to make sure that the process is streamlined and that we're only collecting the information that we need. And so if you are looking to offer the CPE, that will give you some options versus going through a sponsor to use their CPE and so forth. So just a heads up that that's coming this way. So thanks. So Josie, did you want to talk about the return to work, hybrid work arrangements, or?
Yeah, sure, we can. In terms of the, it seems that a lot of our TEI members are experiencing different things around this. It seems in general that most people prefer to kind of do a hybrid also. And we're also seeing the emergence of other types of arrangements where some people have their leases coming due. I'm seeing more and more, and I've been speaking just this morning with TEI members that are moving to like a WeWork type of arrangement. It's kind of interesting, and I just thought, like, the whole point of this is just networking, right? Like if we were able to get them together in person, we would sort of exchange these things and talk about it and our experiences. But that seems to be becoming a little bit more popular. It seems that management, when they see their leases coming due, they're sort of looking at this, they're looking at all the variants going on, and they're sort of saying, everyone's working from home, and here we are spending a ton of money. And I just wanted to kind of talk about it here in case you guys are having these conversations. And I mean, some of course, in our positions as tax, we're often close to our CFOs, and the CFOs, what I'm hearing is they're paying like 15-20% of what they were paying when they had like the full floor space. But the only thing is that then you don't have dedicated offices anymore. So it's a bit changing how we're working. but we're changed anyway, right? Like COVID changed us anyway. And so people are saying, even if they were going back to their office and they have their fixed space, they don't want to do that. They actually really like working from home or having sort of like a hybrid, exactly, where they're going in maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and very specific, like for collaborative projects. There's a reason they're going in. What we're also seeing is a lot of people aren't doing full days anymore. They're saying, why should I go in, 8 hours and get stuck in traffic both ways, possibly? And they're kind of reducing it. They're going in just specifically for certain meetings. And so I just wanted to kind of open the floor here and see. I don't know if we wanted to do breakout sessions or if we wanted to just keep it in the bigger forum. Lisa, Pilar, what your thoughts are?
I think we can just kind of stay in this forum where we only have about 65, 66 people right now.
Okay.
So I think it's a almost manageable size, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't set up breakout rooms, and so it would take me a few minutes and then we'd run out of time. We all know that I like to be brutally honest about things. I wasn't prepared for that, and so I'll fall on my sword for it. But yeah, I think it's, certainly it's something we're struggling with even at the Institute and with the Institute staff, and God bless Pilar for having to try and find the right balance and solution. Because I know if it was up to me, I would, like stay in my little cave at home in perpetuity. But there's definite benefits to being in person and having that interaction and environment as well. So I'd be curious to know what's going on at people's companies and how your chapters are changing and evolving because of the changing workspace as well. Especially for chapters that have very urban geographic areas or very spread out geographic areas, it could be the changing work environment could be impacting your chapter's ability to kind of keep up with your normal operations as well. So that would be an interesting piece of the puzzle also, if others, if people have thoughts on that.
And that's a really good point, because what happens is a lot of times when we would have this TEI event, and we had an event not long ago in Montreal actually that I participated in. It was a hybrid event. And so we had like maybe 50 people in the room, and then there was cameras and sort of broadcasted. But in the past, what would happen is that people would just automatically go after work, right? You're already downtown and then you stroll over. Well, since people aren't downtown anymore, like it just wanted to have that conversation here. And I think that in terms of the breakout rooms, historically we were breaking out by different function, if you will, like treasurers or what, but I think this just impacts everyone. So I think it's fine to do this sort of as a community here. So I kind of put it out to anyone and just, jump in and give your comments, your thoughts, what you guys have been doing, what works in your companies. What I think that what we've seen also, sometimes they code by color. So you've got like a blue team, you've got like a green team, and that way it's not specifically by department, but it's like, okay, the blue team is coming in on Mondays and Wednesdays and, Tuesdays and Thursdays with the idea of COVID, but like also longer term.
I'd like to go first.
I'll go.
Okay.
This is Brandon Draper from PRGX in Atlanta. We have a small tax team. We've only got 3 folks, so it's not, it's not a huge team that we have to find space for or anything like that. But, our company's lease was actually up at the end of this year anyway. And so I think this kind of gave us a perfect opportunity to downsize. So we're actually moving. So we're in, kind of an office park, Cobb Galleria. There's 7 buildings. And so we're staying in the same area. We're just moving from one building to another. And we're going from about 2.5 floors down to 1 floor. So we're going from about 60,000 square feet to 15,000 square feet. And so, all that to say, it hasn't happened yet, so I don't know exactly how it's all going to work. I've seen the floor plan, and it is going to be, hoteling, no dedicated offices anymore, except for, maybe the senior leadership. But right now, almost no one has been working in the office since March of last year. And so, we were going to, we kind of, I think it was after July 4th, we kind of did a limited reopening of the office. And after Labor Day, we were going to do a full reopen, but then the Delta variant came, and so they put that on hold. But I live close to the office, and the CFO's kind of old school and likes to meet in person. So I go in, 1-2 days a week usually. Sometimes more if I feel like it, or whatever the circumstances may be. But for other than that, other than the CFO's direct reports and a few other people, who maybe have to be in the office every day because of their job, pretty much nobody is in the office, and hasn't been for almost 2 years. So that's our company's status.
Brandon, I think that's the status of a lot of companies. Do you find that you're suffering like in your group, or do you think that the teams is sufficient? Or are you kind of supplementing different ways? Like maybe you're doing separate events where you come together anyway.
We have a little bit, we have weekly tax team meetings virtually, but we have been, we've had to, since we're moving to a different building, we've had to come in and clean up filing cabinets and that kind of thing. So we've been able to, see each other that way and have some meetings in the office. But yeah, so we had a staff level person leave at the end of 2020. And so we hired a new person in January of this year. And so, it was 6 months or more before I ever met this person in person. And so, training someone virtually and, keep getting them engaged and keeping them engaged has been a bit of a challenge.
We often hear it's the ones that are, younger in their career that are suffering because of that mentorship. That's a little bit of a different experience when it's 2D as opposed to, in person. It's the hallway conversations that are missing. It's the going to the water cooler or the coffee, that type of thing.
Yeah, I can see that. Someone who's only has a couple 2-3 years of experience, they don't, this is all that they know. And it's very strange. I know my first 2-3 years of my career, I, went to lunch all the time with Mitch. And
hey, calm down.
That was, that was nice. That there was a lot of camaraderie, big groups of people went to lunch all the time, and, there were friendships and relationships, and, this environment just makes it a little tougher to do that.
But I still think you owe me a lunch, so I have to think about that.
You're probably right.
No,
this whole concept sort of like of surviving versus thriving, like it is what we've been doing. Does this work only because we all had solid set up beforehand, because we're at a certain point in our career that we were able to kind of handle this storm, if you want to call it that, for the past 2 years? But longer term, is this really how we want to work, like long term? I don't know. I'm curious. I actually don't know the answer. I'm just curious what you guys think. Or is it something like in between? Is it sort of like having some flexibility? Kind of feels like people don't want to go back 5 days back to what it was, but to be no days, there's maybe something in between. I don't know. What do you guys what are your experiences? What are your thoughts on this?
I was just going to give you one comment, Josie, that it is important in person. We onboarded 2 people when I was with Coke. We onboarded 2 people virtually, right? And they did not get that relationship with people, even meeting people. It's very hard when you first start a company to send emails to people and say, hey, I'm doing this and that. You really have to start meeting them. And like you said, getting to understand people, what their roles are, what their family's like, how you can operate and add value. But yeah, I definitely see changing environment from what I see out there. And many people are going either fully virtual or partially virtual for work. I mean, in person, maybe a day, a week, once a week or once a month. So it's going to be all over the place.
It kind of goes back to what Brandon was saying, like, do you guys care about the hoteling anymore? Like in the past, maybe it was super important. You had your own office and your own space. Does that matter as much anymore? If you're spending a good part of your time working from your home office, it's comfortable. Why are you even going in the office if it's just for collaboration and meeting with people?
Yeah. Curious,
what are your thoughts on that? I think that, do you like the hoteling concept? Do people find that it works? You think with COVID it's okay?
Mary?
I guess you've seen.
Started out with hoteling and are still working through that. Upper management wants to see most of the department heads within the department, but our managers are required to be in 2 days a week, and staff is required to be in 1 day a week. And then we have collaborations via Teams twice a week. And we try to set up meetings once a month where everybody comes in so that we can just go over what needs to be gone over and, go from there. And that seemed to be working fine for us. I mean, we got through all of our returns and everything on time, no issues. And then, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of the consultants out there, most of your meetings are via Teams anyway. So it's really the collaboration between the teams on Teams to get what needs to get done. So, I'm in 3 days a week. They moved that up to 3 defined days so that if somebody from upper management wants to come in and discuss something, they know where to find me and what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have anything to add?
Well, yeah, this is Chuck Fitzer. I work for a company called Equinity, and we're in the process of being acquired right now. But, we're supposed to come in 3 days a week, but my boss comes in 1 day a week, so I come in 1 day a week. So it's and part of it is there's so much uncertainty in the future just with our company. Nobody knows, what it's like. And then we have uncertainty because we don't know what our new parent is going to expect. So it's sort of confusing, but I just think overall, I think you're creating a generation that's just starting to work. They're new in their jobs, or they hadn't been in the work world for too many months or years before the pandemic hit, and they're getting used to this and they like it. And I don't think you're ever going to go back to where it's a regular thing to be in the office. And I think they're going to have to convince younger employees to come in for meetings once a month or once a week or something like that. So just because employees have sort of seized the initiative, and they're not going to give it back. Companies, as long as some companies offer full work from home or mostly work from home, other companies are going to have to follow suit, or they're not going to have any employees. So I really think that's what's going to happen. So anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to be the same. I mean, people who were quote unquote old school and, like coming in the office every day, have their routine, they were forced to change their behavior. And now most of them, at least that I've talked to, like it. They like working from home and they like the flexibility. And you know, maybe they, you know, come in a couple days a week just to, you know, kind of have some, you know, change of scenery. But other than that, yeah, it's hard to see it going back full time in the office. And, you know, my company has had, you know, several people leave recently, and, you know, I don't know if that's probably part of it, but, you know, the expectation that they're going to have to start coming back in the office, you know, most people have realized, hey, I've been doing this full remote for almost 2 years, so it can be done, and I want to do it that way. So if my company doesn't let me, then the job market's so hot that I'm going to go find another company that will let me work full-time remote. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of people, you know, changing jobs or considering it because of that.
I like Sarah's comment in the
Yeah.
chat. So
Hey,
well,
Josie,
great.
it's Chris Dressler. I guess I would just add, it would be interesting to have this conversation as an ongoing dialogue over the next 6 months, 12 months. I mean, my company, Bacher Chemical, is still in COVID protocol where, again, we're fully remote. So we've published a policy, like it sounds like maybe other companies have, where we're saying we're going to be hybrid. So we're going to allow people to work, you know, from home, but be in the office a minimum of 2 days a week. But again, I just keep thinking, well, we have to live that policy a little while anyway before we really even understand how it's working, because we haven't, who knows, we're still months away probably from getting to even saying we're in the post-COVID world. So plus we add in, for me, a unique situation of we're moving again we're building a brand new headquarters in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we're actually, you know, so we're not hoteling, we're giving everybody brand new space in a very collaborative environment, which I'm not sure that's the way the world is moving right now, but but we'll see. So I'll leave it there.
Great. Well, we're coming up to 1:30. And so to be, again, respectful of everyone's time, just wanted to thank you all for joining us today and for participating. These, as Josie and Mitch said in the beginning, you know, have proven to be really helpful tools, both for the Institute staff so that we can understand where the challenges and opportunities are for the chapter, but I think also for the chapters to learn from each other and benefit from each other's experience. So we will continue to do these moving forward. I think we have a couple more scheduled already for the rest of the fiscal year. And so thank you again for your time. Happy holidays, whatever you choose to celebrate, and stay healthy and well, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
Bye, Lisa. Thanks, everyone. Bye.